Some have equated Chicago to a city under siege. Nearly a dozen shot, 4 of them killed in just the last 24 hours. And that follows a shooting Thursday night when 13 people were hit by gunfire in a park. All of this happening while the city says things are getting better. We're going in depth next. In Chicago, 11 people shot overnight, 4 of them killed. 13 people shot Thursday night, one of them a 3-year-old boy. But these aren't rare or isolated incidents. It's just another night on the city's south side. Once again, Chicago is in the spotlight over gun violence. A chilling reminder that it is the city with the highest number of homicides in the country. Families are at a breaking point.
It needs to stop. It needs to stop. Y'all out here killing these innocent people, kids, parents, grandparents, mothers, fathers. It got to stop. Y'all need to stop.
In a statement, President Obama weighed in on the violence in his hometown via a spokeswoman. He sends his thoughts and prayers to the several victims who were shot last night and hopes for their speedy recovery. The president remains committed to pushing Congress to pass common sense measures and is doing everything in his executive power to reduce gun violence. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel calls the acts senseless and brazen, and he says that they have no place in Chicago. The police chief says that this is something we cannot accept in a civilized society.
Illegal guns. Illegal guns. Illegal guns drive violence. And military-type weapons, like the one we believe to have been used in this shooting, belong on a battlefield, not on a street or in a corner or in a park in the back of the yards. This country should have a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, like the ones used in this event. It's common sense.
And this is the perfect place to bring in Don Lemon, who is in Los Angeles. And Don, I know normally you're here in this chair, but you had the weekend off, but felt so strongly about this topic that you wanted to come in and do the story anyway. Violence in Chicago has been a story that's been very close to your heart for some time. Why?
Because I live there. I have roots in Chicago. I have many friends and loved ones in Chicago, people I love a lot. And I spent a lot of time on those streets and in those neighborhoods. And as a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I spent time there interviewing people who had fallen victim to this gun violence and people who perpetrated this gun violence. I want to bring in now psychologist Wendy Walsh. She's a criminal defense attorney. Holly Hughes is here as well. And also Peter Nickeas. He is a breaking news reporter for the Chicago Tribune. Thank you all so much for joining us and for coming in on a Saturday. This is a story, as I said, that is very, and as Martin has said, it's very near and dear to me. And I'd love to get to Chicago once I'm done here to report more on this story. Peter, I'm going to start with you because you're there. So you're the overnight reporter for the Tribune. Basically, you cover crime and you cover violence in the city. You've been out on these streets. I want you to help put into perspective for us the 24 people shot there in just 2 days.
Well, the 24 people shot overnight, Thursday into Friday, it was a bad night aside from the 13 people getting shot in the park. There were 3 homicides. But it's not terribly uncommon to have a night when you have a number of murders and even more non-fatal gunshot victims. To have so many people shot in one incident is rare here, but there have been, in the last year and a half or so, more than 500 shootings in which more than 2 people have been shot. So, I mean, you're looking at 22 to 2,500 gunshot victims each year, you know, 400, 450 or so die. Shootings are pretty common here.
They are pretty common, but listen, crime rate is down, and we're going to get into that, but one wonders, you know, when police say the crime rate is down, when you hear all these incidents like this, you just begin to wonder what is really going on. What is the underlying problem here? And we've been talking about this for years. Holly, I want to bring you in because these are the kinds of cases that you prosecute. Mm-hmm. So what does a justice system need to do to make an impact on this violence? And we're talking about Chicago today, but I'm here in Los Angeles. And I've seen reports on the news about 2 people shot here, 3 people shot there. I'm sure it's the same on the news in Atlanta. I'm sure it's the same on the news in many big cities across the country. What does the justice system need to do to make a difference, to make an impact here?
Well, Don, it comes down to money, and we don't like to hear that, but that is the bottom line. You need more police officers on the streets. You need more prosecutors in the courtroom, and frankly, you need judges who, once these people are arrested, will sentence them to very long sentences so they don't get out and repeat this violence. You need to have mandatory minimums. If you kill somebody with an assault rifle, the legislature needs to step up here and say, okay, if you kill somebody with an assault rifle, if you kill multiple people in one incident, there's going to be enhanced sentencing for that. There's going to be a mandatory minimum of, 100 years or whatever number to try to get people to understand. But when you slap somebody on the wrist for aggravated assault and go, well, here's a 5-year sentence, you can have probation, they don't take it seriously, and they are right back out there committing these crimes again and assaulting a community that isn't being protected.
I'm glad you said that, assaulting a community that is not being protected, and I'm wondering if they're not being protected because, number one, the people who have the guns shouldn't have them, and the people who don't have them are the ones who are being assaulted. And number two, Holly, you're talking about the legal aspect, the justice system.
Right.
But what about the people who are actually doing the shooting, Wendy? Where does this mindset come from that you can just go out and shoot people and this is how you handle your business, this is how you take care of problems?
You know, Holly's talking about the after effects of this kind of violence. When I think about psychology, I want to think about the prevention of this stuff. And it's all 0 to 3. We need more support in our culture for all the single parents that are out there, whether they're a single dad or a single mom. It's just too much when you're working full time to be a good parent as well. Plenty are doing it, I know that. But this is why the young folks find gangs, because it's a surrogate family for them. This is why the moral teaching isn't there anymore, because mom or dad is off trying to just make enough money to get food on the table, and that's enough. And also, I think, Don, we're going to go there. We're going to talk about gun control and the buyback programs. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. But there are people who are sitting here looking, and listen, I understand it's tough. I came from a single family. My mom was a single mother for a very long time. But there are people out there saying, hey, listen, why should I give my hard-earned money? I'm out there trying to put food on my table, trying to pay the rent and pay the mortgage. Why should I raise your kids and your kids are growing up and shooting my kids?
You risk being a victim then. You know, it's our choice. We can raise good employees and good entrepreneurs in our village here, or we can raise prisoners. We can raise people who buy semi-assault weapons and take them to a park. It's our village, and we are a national community, and we have to start to think about how we can support families, especially in those vulnerable early years, because our personality development, our moral reasoning, and our emotional intelligence is really grown from 0 to 5. We got to focus on parents of small children.
All right, so I want to talk more about the psychology here, about mental health, because clearly if you're going out and you're doing this, you probably have a mental health issue in some way. And I also want to talk about what Wendy said, and that is gun control. Talk about that to all of you, especially you, Holly. You know how the legal process works when it comes to this. This conversation is far from over. Coming up, we're going to look at the raw numbers. We're going to look at the numbers, and we're going to search for solutions. Murders in Chicago are down this year, so why are we still having this conversation? Next, why violence in Chicago is different from any other tragedy in America.
Hi, Martin Savage. We'll get back to Don Lemon in just a moment. We are closely watching, though, the breaking news in Kenya right now. That's where a group of men that are armed have burst into a shopping mall, and they opened fire. That was in Kenya. And today, the president, the office there, has just released a new casualty report. And we're told that at least 39 people are dead, 150 more people wounded. And we are now also being told by the State Department that some Americans are among those wounded. An extremist group with ties to al-Qaeda has claimed responsibility. And this attack, we remind you, is not over. Gunmen and police are still facing off inside of that mall. Now we're continuing our conversation about gun violence in America, a conversation sparked by the shootings in Chicago over the last 2 days that have claimed 4 lives and left 20 people wounded. A peace march is scheduled there for tonight, and the Chicago Peace Basketball Tournament going on there right now, an event that was organized by current and former NBA players. Let me bring now back Don Lemon in Los Angeles. And Don, just to get the conversation going again, how does Chicago violence differ, say, from other national tragedies?
You know, I wish I knew the answer to that, Marty. I mean, it's just so many people get killed there, even though they said that the violence is down, homicide rates are down there. I wish I knew. I wish I knew, because it seems to be the example that everyone points to in the news, because it just happens so much. Let's bring back in psychologist Wendy Walsh and criminal defense attorney Holly Hughes, and also Peter Nickeas. He's a breaking news reporter for the Chicago Tribune. I wish I could answer Martin's question, because it makes me want to cry, and I'm here on business.
Well, Don, one factor.
Wendy, and I told you. Hang on. Hang on. Okay. I'm here on business, and talking to people. Everyone is coming up to me because it's a big event, a big urban event that's happening here, and it's part of the discussion at the event that I'm at. And everyone is asking, what is going on in Chicago? What is going on in Chicago? What is going on in our streets? Why are so many people killing each other with these guns, Wendy? And it's a topic that's really on everyone's mind. Go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, well, sorry to cut you off. One factor is the health care issue. In Chicago, there are more deaths, not just shootings, but more deaths by gunfire, because the trauma centers, their cutbacks have been so great that people are bleeding out in ambulances, having to travel 10 and 15 miles to get care. So that's a big problem.
Yeah, but there are more deaths, though, because people are shooting. The problem is that people are shooting each other. I mean, if they weren't shooting each other, you wouldn't need that. But Peter, I mean, why do you think only the only time America talks about Chicago violence is when the collective numbers really reach a level that they have reached this weekend, when they reach a certain point? Why do you think that it only comes into the conversation then?
Yeah, you know, when I'm out, I hear from people almost a sense of resignation about what's going on, especially among the young people. And it was mentioned here yesterday about how a lot of the shooters and the victims are so young. And the older folks who've been here a long time just shake their heads at it. I think it's been like this for decades. I mean, it was worse in the 90s. It was worse in the early part of this decade. And you'd mentioned the crime being down. Even if there are half as many homicides and non-fatal shootings as last year, you're still looking at 250 homicides and 1,200 non-fatal gunshot victims. I mean, it's steady, it's unrelenting, it's been going on for a long time, so I think people are almost resigned to it here. And it's sad to say, like you said, I mean, I live here too, it disgusts me, but it is something that's a regular occurrence here.
Yeah. Wendy, you know, I'm sorry, again, sorry to cut you off, but I really want to get to, I understand what you're saying about the hospitals. Listen, there's not enough money to go around for a lot of things, but I really want to get into the psyche here and into the mindset to find out what it is that drives people to think it's okay to do this and to talk about mental health. And you also said about gun control. I don't know if that's really the answer here. I think it's more than just gun control. That may be part of it, but that's not just it.
Can I jump in and ask Dr. Wendy something? Because I used to see this when I was prosecuting. And what we see is there's just there's a lack of respect for life. Young people coming up now play games, video games. I mean, I don't want to give the wrong number here on air, but Grand Theft Auto Edition 87, whatever it was, premiered the other day and made a ridiculous, I mean, an astounding amount of money in 24 hours, like $84 million in 24 hours. So what I find, and even when I talk to clients in private practice, there is no respect for human life. They are brought up shooting at TVs. Guns are just everywhere. It's a game, and they don't understand the end result.
For sure, they're becoming desensitized.
They could be becoming desensitized, but there is no concrete research that shows a connection between violent video games.
Right, and that's why I wanted to ask Dr. Wendy, because I'm not the doctor.
There is actually, Don, there's some great research out of a university. Go ahead. There's some great research in Toronto.
I would argue that these kids are keenly aware of what's going on.
Wendy first.
No, these kids understand it. They're well aware of the consequences. Even if they're not victims, they have to. They play in these parks. They ride their bikes up and down the alleys. They hear the screams of the family outside the crime scenes. They hear the sirens flying in. Last night Thursday night they had 10 ambulances flying from all across the city to get to this crime scene. The dispatchers were over the radio saying there's 10 people shot.
My question was about the perpetrators. So I'm asking Dr. Wendy.
Yes.
Right.
Hang on. Let's talk about the perpetrators.
There's a delay. Everybody, hold on. Everybody stop. Everybody stop. There's a delay. So let's be respectful of the audience because they can't understand when everyone is talking. So Wendy, a quick answer, and then I'm going to get to break, and then I'm going to come back and we'll talk more. So if you can answer the question that was asked of you.
there's some pretty fascinating research out of a university in Toronto showing long-term video game use and a direct association with increased aggression, even in girls. So yes, they're becoming desensitized. Yes, they're definitely becoming more aggressive. And Dawn, to answer your other question, what we need are buyback programs for those illegal weapons that will make moms and sisters pull weapons out of their sons' hands and steal them from their baby daddies and from their husbands' hands. If it's worth a good gift certificate at a grocery store and you'll get $500 worth of food, you watch how fast those guns will come in. It worked in Australia, and it can work here.
Wendy, Australia is smaller than Texas. It's smaller than California. It's about the size of Florida. What you're asking of the United States, many people find impossible. They don't think that it will ever work here because it's a different country. Hold your answer, your response to that, and we'll talk about that after the break.
I'm Wolf Blitzer. This is CNN.
More of our conversation now about gun violence in America, and you're looking at scenes now. That is Chicago on Thursday night. A conversation sparked by shootings in Chicago over the last 2 days that claimed 4 lives and left 20 people wounded. I want to bring in Peter Nickeas to talk about the alarming rate of gun homicides in Chicago and just gun use. Holly Hughes is here, criminal prosecutor, and also Wendy Walsh, who is a psychologist. So, Peter, I want to talk to you about out on the streets. And listen, when we researched this and tried to get people to do this after these shootings, to get someone to come on and talk about this from the community, nobody wants to talk. Everyone is afraid. Why is that?
I think people have a real fear of retaliation, and we hear it out in the street a lot. They'll say, you know, I really can't be seen talking to you, and we get it. They live there, and people kind of have an idea of what's going on. And I mean, even the kids have an understanding of who's fighting with who. The other night, out at the scene where the 13 people were shot, people were able to give us right away what gangs were into it with each other, and you can read it off the graffiti on the garages and the walls and things like that, but nobody wants to be involved.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to think, there's so much we wanted to talk about here. Wendy, we want to talk about the gun buyback program, which you are such a proponent of. And trust me, this is television, and we're up against a break here and up against another show, so I don't always get as much time as I'd like. But I promise you, viewers on this show, we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to go to Chicago and to other communities, and we will continue this. The alarming crime rate in Chicago, but listen, according to Chicago police, they said that their crime numbers are down. Their violent crime numbers and their homicide numbers are down this year, despite the shootings that happened there last night and the night before. Thanks to my guests, and we're going to get back to Martin Savage in just a bit, and I'll get back to my business in L.A. I'll see you soon here on CNN. We're back after this break.